And boom! According to that, I am live. My name is Yuko Simon. Welcome. This is Tokyo Tonight. It's 10:31 p.m. Japan Standard Time, Sunday evening, as usual. Hello to everybody who's joining different parts of the world. I know it's during the day in Europe and, of course, in the morning in America. It's funny, the preview, it was looking blurry, but no, it looks okay now. I've got 8 viewers, 4 likes. Appreciate those likes. That's pretty much all that I do this for. Remember, I don't monetize any of these videos. You don't get ads like interrupting or stopping you watching. I just do it purely for external validation. That's the only reason I'm really doing this. Actually, that's not really true. I would do this even without it, but it's always nice to get it. Nice to see we've already got so many people rocking into the chat. Slake Manson, excellent to see you. Hi, right back at you. Good to see you. We've got Justin Connolly. Waiting for the boom. I hope I brought the boom in all the ways that you were expecting and more. We've got Quentin Rankin. Good to see you, Quentin Rankin. Good morning, I guess. Good to have you in here. We've got Lara. Good to see you, Lara, as always, from Japan. Yes, indeed. Oh, more people in here. We got Yoni coming in. Moi, good to see you, a man from Finland. We've got Musashi Mark. Hey, great that you can make it, Musashi Mark. I actually appreciate that you watch the recorded videos and leave comments because there aren't many comments. There aren't many people who take the trouble to watch these when they're recorded, which I understand. The videos look a little bit long, so I guess you've got to know what you're getting into. But I appreciate that you do that and leave comments, actually. It's nice during the week to get a nice comment from someone who appreciates it after the fact. So thank you for that, Musashi Mark, and great to have you in here live. Yeah, I pay extra attention to your comments because they're like the highlight of my week, seeing that someone actually watched the video after I stopped recording it. Amrot007, good evening to you. Tadom, great to see you, yeah, looking forward to catching up for lunch, but yeah, great to have you in the chat as always. We've got our moderator, Aaron, bringing the boom. Good to see you. Wow, we've got Oscar Hafstad, konbanwa, right back at you. Wow, we've got, yeah, lots of people do say hello. It's fun. Everybody's saying hello, and not just to me. It's fun that you can say hello to each other. And share where you're from in the world and so on. It's nice that we're having a strong Nordic representation, as always, in the comments. To appreciate that. And yeah, there are actually, I wasn't that busy per se on Twitter this week, but there's a lot of comments. I was actually just having a really interesting discussion. I find myself, yeah, well, I'll get to this in a moment, talking about the mega solar thing. I was literally just tweeting back and forth about it. I can give some context. I'm guessing most of you don't follow my Twitter. You don't need to if you follow this. This is my weekly summary of everything on my Twitter, and it's far less exhausting than trying to keep up with me for for 7 days. But yeah, I've had some interesting and actually learned some stuff. Even the last hour, I've learned some stuff. But what I do like about this is I get a chance for a moment to talk about and share my thoughts about these things, and to take your comments back and questions and suggestions back. So as always, remember you can comment back. I'm going to switch to a new system, by the way. I mean, I'll try as much as, at least I'll try to pick up if the comments are aimed at me and share them on screen more. Yeah, I do like how the comments look and everything in this setup. The only thing is that I no longer have that system where I can directly tell which ones are the ones that I'm supposed to respond to. Cobra Senshi, go grab that coffee and grab those cookies. And yeah, sit back. Of course, we're gonna have another DJing session. I bought a bunch of music. I actually put up 2 mixes of newish music during the week. The first mix I put up of like club music, which actually is really good. Well, it's all, I say so myself. It's pretty good. It's like an hour long, and I put it up expecting that it would get taken down because I think it's Charlie YXC or something like that. That track. Or that artist seems to like nuke anybody who puts their music up. Like it's blocked in all countries, and I knew that I had a couple of tracks from that person on, so I expected the whole mix to get nuked. And I put it up, and sure enough, I got your video is nuked. You cannot be seen anywhere, but you can trim out one of the multiple tracks from that person and see how you do. And I did that, and the video has been like visible in everywhere except for Belarus and Russia ever since. But expecting that was down, I put up a second mix of drum and bass music, which also was actually, I mashed a lot of stuff into that, had a bit of fun with that. And that's actually quite good as well. And I was expecting there to just be the one mix there, but then the other mix came back. So there's 2 mixes I put up yesterday, which is more than I intended. But I've actually got a ton of pretty good new music up lately. And those mixes where I can settle down and where I can, if I buy the tracks, I can actually mash them up more. I can extract the stems, the vocal, the music, and make them blend together and do all sorts of cool stuff. More than I can do on the live thing with tracks I don't know, because I've got to use Apple Music for that, and you can't you can't extract the stems for that. But yeah, I do think I'm really pleasantly surprised with the amount of love that comes out in the after party sessions. It's a lot of fun for me, and yeah, I discover a lot of really good music that way, so I always appreciate that. Believe in yourself. Great that you made it, and also great that Michael Gillen Peckett made it. As always, great to have you in the chat. Yeah, lots of topics this week, so I don't know. I think I'm going to jump in early. One quick heads up. I'll say it again at the end of the show, but I was talking with Victor today, and we are definitely going to do a 2.5 Voyages next week. Have some ideas for things to do. There's one thing I didn't put into my tweets that I didn't cover this week, but just while I remember. Some of you might know the YouTuber known as Unrested. His channel's become active again recently, and he's just sort of storytelling. And he's been telling stories about old J-vlog community drama from like the early 2010s and stuff like that. Stuff which, I mean, it was a different time, you know, but there was an actual community. We did all sort of know each other. And in the background, there was some stuff going on at times, which I tried to stay well away from. But Scott sometimes clumsily was involved in. And he's telling the stories of that. And yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of nostalgic. If you were following the Japan YouTube community around 2010, yeah, the videos he's putting up and so on, they're fun to watch lately. So I do recommend go check out Unrested's channel if you're not following them lately. The channel's active again, and yeah, they're interesting stories. But that's one of the options for next week is getting him on. But I think another option is Victor and I were talking about going into. We know some people who are like against like AI ripping off artists and stuff like that. And I'm hoping we might be able to get someone who's able to talk on that. And I think we know someone in common who might be good for that. So hoping whatever it is, hell, it might just be me and Victor, but we'll have a good 2.5 Voyages next week. So something to look forward to. More people rocking into the comments. We've got DJay Sunnyside Up. Peace and love from Japan. Indeed, down in Kochi. Good to see you. Yeah, Aaron, I watched the video on Eat Your Kimchi as well. I didn't know any of that stuff. I mean, credit to him in a way for knowing all of that. I kind of prided myself on not knowing any of that. But yeah, that was actually exactly. So yeah, he did a video on. I feel like without wanting to go to Harry Potter, she who must not be named. I had nothing to do, and I want nothing to do. I did make a comment on the video, which I possibly shouldn't have done. I sort of broke my rules about drama by leaving a comment, but it's kind of funny. But anyway, yes. Well, okay. Hell, I'm trying to be cryptic, but Aaron just said it, and that's correct. So anyway, good times. Also, yeah, Mira, Canada Jean left some comments on herself on that video. And she still seems the same old Mira, so good on her for not changing and all of that stuff. Who else we got in here? Oh, geez. Odie Jr., good to see you. And everybody else. Hope I haven't missed anybody. I don't think I have. I'm going to jump into the topics because there is actually quite a lot to go through tonight. Just some of these I'll go through quickly. Some of them I'll go through slowly. Oh yeah, some of the, maybe just before I go in, this one thing I did try during the week. So I saw all the things about how now with OpenAI's ChatGPT 4o Omni, the new model, I tried using this for code. Well, first I tried imitating the demos, and I found it terrible at that. Like for teaching a language or for it wouldn't talk back to me like Scarlett Johansson. That's a topic I have covered later on, which we'll come to. I tried all the different sorts of things, and I found it wasn't very good. But when I gave it some coding tasks, which I do for work, kind of for fun at work. I'm not actually a coder at work, but my company is an IT company, so and I used to do coding. So I did that for fun, and it's really it's even improved on what it was before in terms of programming, if that's something that you find it useful for. So that was great. And I noticed that, yeah, you can actually give it just a URL for a YouTube video, and it can like watch the whole video and summarize it for you. And I thought, well, that's great if you can really do that. And all this controversy that's starting to come out about, companies using YouTube videos to train their AIs without asking Google for permission. In fact, competing against Google, and Google saying, well, that's not cool, even though Google's kind of doing the same thing to everybody else. But I'm like, okay, if you can really watch my whole video, I would love if you could just like watch my whole video and time code all the chapters of the topics I'm talking about, which would be an interesting challenge because I'm chasing squirrels half the time. I mean, it'd be kind of cool if the AI was so smart that at some point it would just say between 5:05 and 7:30 chasing squirrels. I would even appreciate that as a chapter on the video. But yeah, I'd like to go through myself. What are the topics that I talked about? Can you actually follow that? And could you go back and do that for every one of my videos? Which would actually make them more searchable and indexable and stuff like that. So I'd really love to do that. I'd love to put in intelligent chapters. And I discovered that it It could be my accent, it could be my face. I don't know, but it's not up to snuff. It cannot understand anything. I think last week it said I was talking about programming, and it was completely hallucinating, time codes and stuff. I'm looking for, in a way, that's a good thing, because that means that when it does get good enough that it can actually understand what the videos are saying without the videos being pre-captioned by the owners and so on, which is still, there's a huge amount of those videos, but when it can actually watch videos and understand them, that's a huge amount of information that's not currently available to these AIs, which says that, there's a problem that the AIs are running out of training data. But this actually tells me that, they can't even process this type of data, yet. And when it can, that'll help it not necessarily get smarter, but better at language anyway. It'll process more natural language. So, yeah, it's something I'm looking forward to. But anyway, enough distractions from... I did not know that you were from the... I thought you were from Athens, Black Tengu, but you say that you're from the beautiful Greek island of Skiathos, which I'm sure I mispronounced. Are you there on holiday, or is that actually where you're from? But that sounds... any sort of Greek island. I just imagine... Oh, God, now I've said it. I've got to remember what it is. That one with all the white buildings and blue sky and everything that looks kind of like, ancient classical world paradise. What is that island that everyone always talks about for Greek islands? Anyway, it sounds wonderful. And Greek food is some of my favorite food in the world. But yeah. Wow. Believe in Yourself follows coders on Twitch. That's much more hardcore than I am. Michael Gillen Peckett, or it means you can never create the AI Hikobot that could do all your work so you can make more YouTube videos. Yeah, well, I do love the idea of having an assistant, that can actually keep up with and understand what I'm doing. Santorini. Laura, I was trying to think of Santorini. Everybody goes to Santorini. I know there's like a million Greek islands, but everybody puts on Instagram Santorini. That's the one I was thinking of. I'm sure Michael Nelson called, Sasuga Italian, yes. Italians know more Greek islands. So in New Zealand, we only know one Greek island, even though we know that there are bazillions of them. Crete's another Greek island. Lots of New Zealanders fought in Crete. So anyway. Yes, thank you, Black Tengu. Santorini. And I realize what a terrible tourist cliche. That's like trying to remember a town in Japan with all the temples. It's like only knowing Kyoto, but there we go. The big mountain, which we are going to talk about. Okay, I've been chasing. I was ready to start 8 minutes ago. And as usual, here I am still waiting to start. Let's start. There are now 20 million people over 75 years old in Japan, which is a lot. Remember, the retirement age was 65. They are, I think, further down in my tweets, we're talking about the government's thinking about redefining elderly from being 65 to 70. Given that a pretty solid percentage even make it to 100 nowadays, this is a very, very large chunk of the country that, are not working. Are net recipients of tax spending, of a dwindling tax pile, because both the economy is declining and the number of people working is declining. And yet more people need to live off, pensions, and the system is not going to make it until I'm sure that retirement is not going to exist, and I'm not going to be able to retire probably till I'm 80. I'm hoping that my AI Scarlett Johansson is going to be able to help me be economically productive until then, or maybe we'll all just be on universal basic income or something by then. But lots and lots of old people. And while Japan is certainly at the forefront of the sort of aging society thing, Italy, Korea, Russia, there's a bunch of other countries also going through the same sort of thing. And I guess we're going to find out what happens. But there you go. Dan H, glad that you could make it. Which out-of-the-way Japanese island would you like to visit? Says Quint Ranked. That's a good question. You know what? Nijima. It's near Tokyo. It's actually part of Tokyo Prefecture, I believe. It's one of the islands on the way to the Ogasawara Islands. It's sort of is in between Tokyo and Oshima. You can get there by ferry, I believe. There's apparently good surfing there. There's also some other really cool islands. Actually, going down to the Ogasawara Islands, which includes Iwo Jima and those islands that were sort of contested in World War II. But there's one island it looks like a sort of an anime sort of location. It's got it's sort of got like a donut and a volcano crater in the middle of it, and people sort of live it. It looks like it sort of is a made up island. The little islands like that I must admit would be super cool to go to. But yeah, Nijima's kind of famous. It's relatively accessible to Tokyo, but you have to go there by ferry, and it's got good surfing and beaches. But yeah, I don't know. Any other islands? Japan's, of course, got tons of islands. I've heard of places. I've got friends from Amami-Oshima, which sounds kind of cool, but also way out of the way and way Inaka and stuff like that. But hell, I mean, Shikoku. I haven't been to Shikoku, so, you know, I've got to get down there. So that's not really an out of the way island, but there you go. Anyway, Dan H, good to see you. Continuing on, you're lucky if you live until you're 80 and have to find work 5 years after that to afford retirement. Yeah. Well, these are all problems I think we're all going to have to deal with, working, being old and working and all that sort of stuff, which is going to make it super important to be healthy at that age as well. So, yes, indeed. Rugby, a bit of talk about rugby. There was the Japan rugby final today, which I think I've got a tweet about later on, so I guess I'll come back to that. This statistic, if it's true, is kind of astounding. I misread it at first. So this person is tweeting, 45.1% of new adults, people attending the Coming of Age Day ceremony in Shinjuku Ward, Tokyo, are foreign born. I personally love to see it as a woke leftist, LOL. Now, I thought this was foreigners, like gaikokujin, which could be, you know, which for this statistic, as normally gaikokujin would include my son, for example. It would include, because he's got a foreign citizenship as well, even though he's born. If you have a foreign parent, they would probably count that. And for that, at the time that my son was born, when we registered him in Shinjuku Ward in 2009, he was, at that time, 1 in 5 children in Shinjuku, 1 in 5 births were registered as having at least one foreign national as a parent. And I imagine that number's probably like 25. It's gone probably up from 20% to 25%. But 45%, you know, there's a community note that says there's lots of foreign students. But then someone pointed out, they're not talking about foreign residents. They're talking about only people who are foreign born, like not even like half or foreigners born, foreign citizenship born in Tokyo. They're saying that 45% of the people at coming of age ceremonies aren't even from Japan at all. That's surprising to me. And I wonder if foreign born is just a misspeak. There's no linked article that I could see. So yeah, there's a statistic on screen. In fact, the statistic on screen says gaikokujin. It's not saying foreign born. So actually, now that I look at this again, I think they're saying gaikokujin, which I think would include my son. Because otherwise it doesn't make sense saying foreign born. I think this person's mistranslated the screen, because this is just a screenshot from NHK. So anyway, that's the thing. Down here we've got Dan H is addressing me. Simon, yesterday the decision was made to go full grandpa. You bought a 1999 Lincoln Town Car, Cartier edition, very similar to the one that took you to the airport for the flirt to Japan. I assume you mean flight to Japan? I mean, I kind of floated to Japan. I mean, what can I say? A Lincoln Town Car. I don't know. I associate that car with kind of shitty crime dramas from America. Lincoln Town Car, is that like the 4-wheel drive thing, or is that the actual big? I've got the idea of Lincolns as just big honking sedans, which aren't very popular, and you don't see them in Japan or really anywhere other than America. Nowhere else really buys them. But okay, you bought one. I mean, I assume they're really nice, big and comfy inside. Even Seattle, actually, come think of it, I don't really see many of those. One thing about Seattle that surprised me, by the way, last year there were tons of Teslas, and I don't know whether it's Elon pissing off all the liberals in Seattle, but I've noticed there were noticeably fewer Teslas in Seattle this time, and electric cars in general, but there we go. But anyway, congrats. Oh, sorry, I'm talking randomly about Lincoln Town Cars. I know nothing about them, but the Cartier edition sounds fancy, and congrats on the big fancy car. So yeah, nicely done. Sainted Sir, it's 9:50 on Memorial Day weekend, Sunday morning. It's Memorial Day weekend in America. Congratulations on that. I was not aware, in New York City. So there we go. Aaron's saying what, but I don't know what to anymore. Sorry. Did any one of my lawyer friends meet the NBA player Carmelo Anthony, who visited Japan looking for investors for a new investment fund? It's possible that some of my lawyer friends met him, and I don't know. I know people who both work at law firms that support investment funds, as my law firm used to, and people who now work directly at investment funds. But I haven't heard about anyone meeting Carmelo Anthony, but I'm sure if they did, it was a great time. Shubas, a man from Panama, glad that you could make it. Great to see you. Whoa, is that a limo? They won't be drivable in Japan. I've got the idea of them being like these enormous wide town cars, but some of the surfer guys who are really into like just want to buy big American cars and stuff, they buy those sorts of cars. But a limo, okay, well that's fancy. The town car is on the same platform as a Crown Victoria, traditional cop car. Yeah, so like RoboCop, you know, that's the sort of image that I have. Vincent Birch, we got a New Zealander in the chat. Always nice to see some New Zealand accent, which lets me try to turn on my New Zealand accent a bit. Up the Waz won. They beat the Dolphins. I'm kind of, because my mum lives in Brisbane, I kind of support Brisbane teams as well. The Dolphins are doing well, but really glad to see the Warriors win today. Mate, just jumped on now. I'm sounding Australian, trying to sound like a New Zealander. That's a problem. Have I missed a reaction about the big game today and Mo'unga's performance? Top league finals are often awesome, but today's was a real beaut. It was indeed. We have not gotten to the final yet. It's actually close to the top, so we are going to get to it. I am going to talk about the final. I don't talk about rugby much on here, but I will talk about it. So grab yourself a grab yourself a beer, sit down, and it's coming. Don't worry about that. It's like driving a sofa. That's exactly the image. You know what? I think I've ridden in like Lincoln town car taxis, but back in 1999 when I went to America. I probably actually rode in something like the car that you had. Do remember to like. That's right, Aaron. Thank you for reminding everybody. This is pretty much just what I do it for. Peanuts, squirrels, and likes. Yes, the like button obliterated on the screen by Shivers. You know exactly how to do it. A small limo, but huge. It wouldn't fit in a lot of streets. Yes, indeed. BDB, GP, good to see you. Good to see you again. Good to have you back. Yes, indeed. I better move on. We are like 10:52. I've talked about like one topic so far. Comment here from Cameron, who is actually a Kiwi guy, and I sometimes run into him in the street. It's actually a cool guy. And he knows a lot of people that I file, like Langley Esquire and stuff like that. So I actually have good chats with him. He's a good guy. And commenting that if U.S. Ambassador Rahm Emanuel ever becomes president of the United States, it still is amazing to me. He reminds me of Troy Flavel, who was a New Zealand rugby player, known for being a bit of a thug. And he came out here and became this kind of mellowed out, soft, nice guy. And Japan kind of changed him. I don't know, but Rahm Emanuel just seems like a nice man who likes trains. He rides on bullet trains everywhere in Japan. And yes, America will get lots of Shinkansens if he goes back, because he just loves the bullet train so much. And yeah, I mean, I still think probably flying makes sense, but you know what? If you got a really nice bullet train type experience in America, I think people would use it just to avoid flying on the domestic, like to avoid like Spirit Airlines. It's just so awful, the domestic air travel situation. America is so big, you do have to use airplanes for a lot of it. But yeah, I think that the awfulness of American air travel opens up the opportunity for bullet trains to be really successful there. So yeah, how am I living? I'm doing good. DJay indeed coming up at 11:30. So there we go. I don't have a Discord. I have the Discord app, but I don't have a Discord. Not real. Too many things to keep track of. Twitter is my Discord. That's all I can handle. So yes, indeed, have been replaced by smaller sedans or Uber Lyft drivers. Yes, indeed. I don't have a Discord. I mean, if you think I should have a Discord, I can get one. But I like I say, I use Twitter as my Discord. So Elon, thank you, Elon. Or Elon, you can thank me, I should be saying. 10 liters per 100 kilometers. I think that's not very good, but that's what I was expecting. Yes, the squirrels are strong. Fight the squirrels. Okay, back into the topics. Yeah, two big chats right before the show, and oh god, this is literally just 2 hours ago. So okay, this is how much I'm struggling to get through all the topics this week. Big story which Rochelle Kopp from Japan Business Time has been covering. A lot of people have been covering this. It's a horrible case and a weird case. So the story, as I understand it, is that a woman who happens to be a foreign national and dresses like a Muslim. I don't think like full hijab or anything like that, but dresses is identifiable as a Muslim by her appearance. Was in a park, I believe in Tokyo, and her 3-year-old was playing. And apparently there was another Japanese guy whose child was also playing in the park. And he came over and apparently started intimidating the foreign woman. He accused her daughter of having kicked his small son, which the woman denied and the daughter denied. And he ended up calling over and saying things to her like foreigners shouldn't even be allowed to live in Japan and, all sorts of stuff. And called over a police officer. Or a police officer became involved in the altercation. In the course of the altercation, the police officer apparently took the woman to a police station, separately questioned the 3-year-old about what happened in isolation from the mother, and without the consent of the mother, handed over the home address, the home details of the mother to the racist Japanese guy who was sort of intimidating her in the park, which she maintains is without her consent. However, she's brought a case for compensation, saying that the police handled her with prejudice and shared her personal information to someone who was intimidating her, shared her personal information without consent, detained her, separated her child. The court said, we don't believe any of that happened. We don't think that the police would ever, the police say that you gave consent for sharing your address with the person who was intimidating you, and we find them more credible than you, saying that you didn't give consent. We don't believe that a policeman would ever question a 3-year-old without the mother present, so we just don't believe you. And we find everything in favor of the police. The lawyer in question is going to be appealing this. The fact that you could lose a case like this tells me that I hope he gets help, or I hope that the Lawyers Association and lawyers more experienced in holding. I mean, it's hard. Basically, the courts in Japan are just an extended function of the prosecuting function and the police function. They just defend the police. But holy crap, I mean, this is about as straightforward bad facts as you could possibly get for a bad police officer who should just be reprimanded and punished. And instead, they're contesting it in court. And the courts are backing. It's kind of an awful case. And again, for a country that's trying to attract lots more foreigners to live here, really just crazy facts. So, it's good to hear that they're appealing and, just a crazy case. More people here in the chat. We've got Battle of the Beats Tag Team Tournament Finale, Sunday, May 26th at 8 p.m. EST. 8 p.m. EST is going to be tomorrow morning, Japan time. Okay, that's good to know. I don't know if you can on Twitter or Instagram, and I know that DJay Sunnyside Up, who knows me on both, so shoot me a link. I'd be interested if I'm able to check it out. Aaron will sort out the Discord if I do that. You've refused to do so far, but it seems all the rage. Shubis refuses to do Twitter X, so on Discord. Yeah, well, this is the thing. I know people are on Facebook because they hate Twitter. I know people on Twitter because they hate Facebook. I know people who are on Discord because they hate, everything else. You can't really, I don't know that I have, if I had like 100,000 fans with 30,000 on each service, I'd just collapse from the stress before I could even make a decision which one to use. But I don't know. Twitter is anonymous, and I just filter the channels and everything that I use. That's the best way to get hold of me. But I don't know. Maybe if everybody says I should be on Discord, I'll think about it. I try out all the services. I've got a Blue Sky, I've got a Threads, I've got all the things. I try them out, and those ones haven't stuck, and the ones that I use have. So there we go. I don't like cesspools. No, I don't know what's wrong with me. Sadiq, good to see you, man, from Florida. Good to have you here in the chat. And KOTGC, good to see you in the chat, and you concur with Shubis. Basically, just don't go there. You refuse to use... Oh, you're on Discord because you refuse to use Twitter X. Okay, well, if you folks would like me to have a Discord, I mean, hell, like I say, I've got the app. I actually use it for Midjourney. That's the main thing that the guy who I got on for the 2.5 Voyages, he introduced me to that for generating art. It's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm on. I have the app. I could set one up, but I'm not sure I have the bandwidth for another thing to track. But there we go. So maybe the right thing to do here is to come to this one, Mega Solar. So this is one that I sort of wanted to talk about, which I've actually been talking about right up to the start of the show. Mega Solar is a dirty word in Japan. One thing when you travel around on the countryside in Japan, now there's a lot of places that you go. If you drive anywhere with like mountains or anything like that, you can often see these huge solar farms of just solar PV panels just covering mountains and hillsides and stuff like that. And a lot of people don't like them. A lot of people, they don't like the appearance. They worry that clearing all the trees, especially on like mountaintops, increases the risk of landslides, which are a real thing. Landslides like kill hundreds of people, not hundreds every year, but there are usually a couple of really big incidents that involve taking out like small villages and towns and houses and stuff like that, killing people every year. So people are afraid of the idea of destabilizing hills by taking the trees off them, and and not just for mega solar, but for anything, for golf courses, for other sorts of development. And often the way that Japan does a lot of development without proper environmental assessments, leads to the sort of enhanced risk of these sort of landslides. A really big one that happened actually in 2021 in Atami in Shizuoka actually was initially blamed. There was a whole lot of mega solar nearby, and local residents who just hate the appearance of these things. They hate that it's destroyed their beautiful looking mountain that they like looking out their window. They reflect blinding light. You know, they increase the burden on local electricity transmission lines and stuff like that. They have to put in all sorts of infrastructure for it. So lots of people basically are opposed to it to start with. What actually happened with that Atami one is it turned out that the Atami landslide was not caused by the mega solar. It was actually caused on a totally different hill by illegally dumped soil and construction waste. Still a problem. It's still a consequence of the same sorts of problems. But in Japan, yeah, tons of every year construction sites across Japan dig up 247 Tokyo domes of soil, and most of this goes for landfill, but 20% gets dumped. And, you know, one lady had a 30-meter mound, 10-story building, mound of illegally dumped soil, illegally dumped in a plot of land next to her house. And this is what happened in Shizuoka, and that got loaded up with rain and killed dozens of people when it washed down into a city. So I haven't heard of a case where a mega solar farm directly caused an incident like that. However, you know, Rochelle, who I've just already talked about, and by the way, we did Japan Business Time together. I respect immensely. I think she's smarter than me. She's very passionate about these issues. You know, I agree with her. Because she's a smart, reasoned, and quite reasonable person, I find anything I talk with her, even where I think I disagree, I want to keep talking with her, not because I want to persuade her, but because I sort of want to get more information out, because I'm sure there's some place where I can, if I can understand her reasonableness, I can then come around. So my initial thing is, well, even if they look fugly and they mess up the, you know, they mess up the hills and they cut down trees and everything. I know people involved in these sorts of things. I myself was involved in the laws and the tariffs that were, you know, drafted to enable this to happen. To me, when I see these solar farms, I see this as an enormous success. And I see the communities that don't want a solar farm, you know, ruining their mountain or their view out their window is just straight up NIMBYism, you know. And I've heard that people cite, this Japan Times article says that people are worried about fires and they're worried about landslides. But the article itself doesn't actually give any examples of that. And to me, it just sounds like people making up excuses. If they're built properly, you know, you should be able to mitigate things like landslides and fires and whatnot. And, you know, I've never, a fire is even a thing. And Rochelle was like, oh, they're totally a thing. You should look it up. And I did look it up, and I found articles that talked about apparently solar farms, fires are a thing. Not because they're inherently dangerous. It's not because solar cells are inherently dangerous, but apparently the high voltage cables are just, they are prone to having like rats and animals like gnaw at them, which can basically remove all the insulation and lead to fires. Also, thieves come in and steal a lot of the copper wiring and stuff from these, which causes short out fires. And also people just leave litter and so on, which apparently in the hot environment of these places, including just like pet bottles, can also lead to fires. So it's not that the PV itself is inherently dangerous, but the way that these farms are structured, you know, there are lots of examples of fire risks. Fires happen easily because of the other sort of incidental things associated with this, which is causing the insurance premiums to go up. And yeah, just like with any type of development, I suppose that involves deforesting a mountain. Yes, there is subsidence and so on. But again, the people who I know who are involved in mega solar are often people who are, well, the cases that I've heard of is that they're primarily going around all of these golf courses that were built on these hills during the golf boom in the late 1990s and early 2000s. All of these places, and often had like mob money and stuff in them. They all went out of business. They were used for money laundering and stuff. They all sort of went out of business. And a lot of these investment funds have gone and realized that, one, they'll get feed-in tariff subsidy money from the government if they can build land and convert them into solar farms. And they can get these things cheap because they've got these out-of-business golf courses and stuff. So most of the cases I know, and even the case again cited in this article, is a case where they didn't cut down trees to make the mega solar. They actually they bought an abandoned golf course and put it all over the golf course. However, you know, in that case, originally the city government had bought the land and had planned to reforest the area, and then a new mayor got elected and changed the plan to putting mega solar on it. So even being shown examples that, okay, yes, it does cause erosion, and it can cause landslides in typhoons and so on. And fires do happen at these facilities. And as Rochelle said, isn't it just better, instead of ruining our nature, that we just go and put these on the roofs of buildings? Sure. But where I come from on this, well, first of all, So as someone who worked in environmental policy in the early 2000s, the notion that Japan would in 2024 have a problem of there being so much mega solar that regular people are just against all this solar energy being everywhere is kind of a dream come true. I mean, back in the early 2000s, the power companies did not want to install renewable energy anywhere because it's intermittent, it's not consistent, and it can upset power grids. And they were insisting that Japan can have, if you want fossil-free power, you've got hydro and you've got nuclear. But Japan, power companies were dead set against it. It's too expensive. Solar is too expensive, as is wind, and it's too intermittent. And all the greenies at that time, all the people who were talking about the urgency of climate change and how, unless we added more renewable, more carbon-free energy sources to replace the other sort of energy sources that we're being using, unless we added these, we were heading towards a runaway greenhouse effect, which is pretty much what we're already in. We've already crossed a lot of the climate change thresholds that were supposed to be the points of no return for a complete crisis, and we've kind of become numb to this crisis. But again, when we were talking about 1% installation of renewables, Japan is now up to like 20% renewables installed. But what this necessitates, in order to get to that, Japan's a big country with a lot of energy needs. To get to 20% installation, you can't really, you can't cover that number just by getting every homeowner individually agreeing and every apartment building owner to put like solar cells on the roof. It's great. Of course, there are also subsidies for people who want to put solar cells on their roofs. But in a dense city like Tokyo, relying on that and having to rewire all the buildings and the grid and everything to do that, it's not easy to do. Yeah, a lot of places do it. But, if you want to get Japan to carbon free and actually doing something about climate change, if you accept that climate change really is the crisis that should be primarily driving most government policy, which I think it is, this, for all of its problems, including the fires, including the rats, including the thieves, including the erosion and so on, all of which there are things you can do to mitigate, and that you could mitigate just through having better environmental assessments, something where Rochelle and I did sort of agree that if you had proper planning, you can mitigate these and it would be better. But as it is, it's not good. So she thinks as a result, we shouldn't be doing these at all. And other people chimed in saying, oh, I hate ugly mega solar ruining the countryside. But from my perspective is solar, the urgency of the climate change, of the climate crisis is such that this is justified, and stopping it simply for fear that it's gonna, yes, by the way, they also kill birds. There are all sorts of problems with mega solar, right? They're bright, they attract birds that come and cook themselves on them. As with wind power as well. But again, you have to, there's no perfect form of energy generation. But as they go, this is a desirable thing, and it's a massive success that there are huge investment companies that are spending, billions of dollars on adding green energy to Japan's grid at a massive scale. That's, doing something to counter the fact that we've taken all the nuclear power plants offline and have been burning coal nonstop since 2011. That's the bigger problem than anything associated that I've seen with mega solar, in spite of the problems that it has. So for me, it's a net positive. Rochelle has agreed to disagree, which I completely respect. She again is saying, surely we can fix climate problems in ways that don't involve deforesting mountains, and that's a reasonable default position to take. I would say the emergency is such that we should be, again, I mean, nuclear is not desirable at all. We don't know what to do with the waste. The accidents have resulted in depopulating huge parts of Japan, and even then I think that the climate emergency is such that they are still justified. And these, even with their flaws, you should do everything you can to mitigate the problems. But I think, I still think that, when I was responsible for helping to research elements that went into trying to figure out how much Japan should pay, literally solar farms and people who install solar panels on their roofs, how much should Japan pay to make that sort of economic so that people would do it? That research for the Japanese Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, I was in a think tank that did some of the research for that, and we never thought that Japan would get beyond like 5% installation. The fact is that 20 is crazy, and the fact that it's going to go further is possible because of batteries and so on. And we're going to have more mega solar, and it's going to be kind of ugly. But to me, in Japan, and the other thing I wanted to talk about on this, about NIMBYism, it's not just limited. None of these problems are sort of exclusive to mega solar as a problem. Golf courses, of course, cause the same sort of erosion and same sort of problems. But the other thing as well is that the idea that just because Japanese are passionately opposed to mega solar and it's becoming like a thing to be opposed to it, If you've ever seen a new apartment building under construction, I mean, for most things, for example, whenever you have most buildings in Japan are only built to last for about 20 to 30 years, and they get knocked down and rebuilt. And you think, if it's a big apartment building where the owner who owns the building is different to all the residents, like how do they get all the residents to agree to rebuild the building? And it's not easy. And again, one thing from my law firm days was sometimes you would also get a situation where you would buy all the owners of the apartments out, with the idea that by building a better building, that they'll get a nice payout, but you'll be able to make the money back when you sell the apartments from the new improved building that you'll build after it. But then again, sometimes you've got healthy, bored, and financially well off enough 90-year-olds in these buildings that they don't want to relocate for a few years and buy a new apartment. They just want to die, live out their days in the apartment where they are. So a building with like 300 apartments, say, there'll be some holdout, and often elderly, who take the whole process of going through courts and challenging and holding up the development of redeveloping these buildings as like their sort of their new reason for living. and exasperated companies would come to my law firm saying that partly to make sure, of course, that we're not in the bad old days where they're sending in people to actually intimidate and throw thugs and so on, and to throw these people out to do things by the book, but also just to somehow negotiate with these people who have no incentive whatsoever to cooperate. But you talk about, I mean, that's a nice case. The not nice case is if you ever see a new apartment being built anywhere in Japan, it's very common that you'll see the next door neighbors having huge banners of "We oppose this construction next door." And you talk about people who, in most countries, even like New Zealand, Australia, the number of fights between neighbors over they don't like the fence that ruins my view, or that they're 2 centimeters over the line between our properties, and all these sort of property disputes. At least in those countries, there's a process for like appeals and for planning permission for from the council for doing any sort of development or whatever. In Japan, there isn't any process like that. So all that you can do is just express rage. And while Japanese will express rage often through indirect looks and body language, to see huge 5-story tall red letter banners "We oppose this building next to us being built," that's kind of full on crazy. And you see that walking around. I was in a neighborhood that had a couple of buildings like that as it was being redeveloped. So you do get a lot of passionate elderly people who just want to oppose stuff. And that's kind of the way that I look at people who oppose mega solar. The fact that during the Atami thing, the first thing that a lot of community groups did was they blamed the mega solar for the Atami thing, when it wasn't. It was the industrial waste dumping that had been happening in that neighborhood that everyone had turned a blind eye to. But they opposed the mega solar that's actually doing something positive because they don't like the way that it aesthetically looks. And to me, that's how I characterize a lot of opposition to mega solar. Rochelle, in her way, showed me that no, there are actually legitimate problems. and some found it, and indeed practical answers that you can have mega solar. You can do mega solar in a better way. But she's saying in the first place, why can't we just put it on high-story buildings? And the answer is that the scale that we need to do this, you just can't go through building by building. And and again, we should be doing it. We should be doing all the things. But in terms of changing to 30%, 40%, 50% renewable energy, you can only do it in this way. And I think it's a price we have to pay for undoing 200 years of pumping coal ash into the atmosphere and boiling the planet. So to reverse it, this is a sacrifice that's justified. That's my opinion. But I see and respect her different position on this, actually. So anyway, that's something I was talking about just before the show. I'm going to look back at the comments. That was a bit. I wanted to get that out of my system because I've been rapidly tweeting about it. But yes. Quickly skimming the comments, Web3 is media is the best format. Mastodon has less traffic. I don't really like any of them. That's right. YouTube is enough. I think YouTube is enough. We're all here. This is better than Discord. We're all talking. I chase squirrels. What can we do? You're only on YouTube and Discord, not on X, Insta, FB. Shubas, I respect that, honestly. I'm kind of I don't feel like Insta is good for me. I'm barely on Facebook, again, just because I know some people who are on it, not on anything else. I do actually like X. I mean, I don't like X, I like Twitter. And I don't like anything about it other than the way that it works and the people that I follow on it. But yeah. Vincent Birch, I'm going to talk about the rugby in just a second. Seems to travel around a wee bit. Is it true Macca's here is a lot cheaper than other countries? Yeah, I believe it is, especially right now with the yen all over the place. I think if you compare, from what I've heard in America, like a Mac set in America, They have like, now they have like surge pricing. They've become like Ubers, like at certain times of day. They've allowed Big Macs in America to adjust the price. And you can pay like $12, $13, $14, $15 American for a Big Mac set, for a soft drink and a medium fries and a burger. It's like, in yen, it's like 3,000 yen. It's, getting up to 3,000 yen, which is insane. You can still get it. I have not been to Macca's, to McDonald's for, about 7 or 8 years now. I used to go to McDonald's all the time. It's like Coca-Cola, McDonald's. It's one of those things when you're having it, it becomes this habit forming. They put chemicals and stuff into it that make you do that. I'm McDonald's all the time, but I think I had 2 experiences, one being a raw meat burger and another one being a fly in my chips. That made me question, I shouldn't be doing this in the first place, let alone dealing with like places with quality issues. So I just stopped going. I still would say I was a Mac fan before that, but I haven't been in a long time, so I couldn't tell you what a Mac set is right now, but I think it's like 750 yen, which is about $4, which they do definitely not cost $4 for the same thing in America. I don't know how it is in New Zealand though, because again, I haven't looked at the prices, but I've heard that it's a lot cheaper here. They cut the dirt out of mountains too. So that's the thing. They cut the dirt out of mountains for environmental project, for landfill projects and stuff like that. And yes, that causes, so there's all sorts of things that cause landslides. But I've not heard of a case. I've heard, of course, I believe it's inevitable that mega solar is going to cause erosion, but I've never heard of a significant landslide that's linked to mega solar. I've seen cases where mega solar was incorrectly blamed, but not where it was the cause. But absolutely, digging the dirt, soil mining for landfills and stuff like that has absolutely caused that. So yeah, nature will win in the end, methinks. Yes, I think we're all going to be dust in the end. But there we go. If you had a wooden house, you would be worried. All of that stuff. If you quickly flipping through, solar rocks. Pro-nuke bros are disingenuous, parasitic grifters. I'm pro-nuke. I'm not a pro-nuke bro per se, but I accept that again. The climate crisis has kind of forced a reevaluation of that. That I think it's better than alternatives, and it's something that we have to accept until we have fusion and better options. I wouldn't say I'm a bro about it, but I think it's a necessary evil. And even mega solar and so on, for all its problems, it's a similar thing. But yes, rampant inflation. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. That is indeed true, Quint Ranked. Well, sometimes there are solutions, I suppose. It's a little bit fatalist, but yes. Wow, so many comments here. How much power in Japan is hydro? I used to know the stat for this. I believe Japan has a ton of rivers. I believe the stat or the percentage is something like 10 or 20%. Nuclear was a solid 20-30% as well. That was all replaced by coal and natural gas. So yeah. The capitalist life cycle will centralize household feed-in tariffs to the corporations. Already started down under. Well, remember that feed-in tariffs are government subsidies. So in order to encourage these types of desirable renewable energy sources. So, the fact that businesses are, investing in it, that's what the policy was for. The fact that this is like a big corporate thing, that's a successful policy, which we couldn't dream of when I was involved in researching a proper feed-in tariff. Only hippies wanted solar, and the idea of a whole, landscape covered in solar was a kind of a dream, and now it's the case, But I think it's a successful policy that capitalism is now incentivized because of subsidies to go and invest in helping fight climate change with mega solar. That's my view, but a lot of people say, "Oh, but look, it's big corporations investing in it; it must be evil." I don't see it that way. Wow, so many comments. Can I get through? Anyone Swordfish, good to see you. Fun fact, a lot of golf courses are also being rebuilt to fit solar. That's exactly what I'm telling you, that a lot of golf courses are out of business, or they're basically retooling. And those are easier to develop. It's much easier to redevelop a golf course than it is to chop down trees for it. So yes, get off my lawn. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was on it. I will get off it immediately. Wow, we've got 10 minutes left. What are we going to do? Raw meat burger. Wow, yeah, there was just uncooked. They were rushing, and it was terrible. So what can you do? As a pioneer, says JOTCGC, it's good to talk to someone from the 19th century. You have seen experienced legacy businesses use strawman fallacies and dishonest talk to talk down disruptive innovation. Oh, me too. I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's what legacy, any sort of technology. I work in IT. The whole sales model of on-premises IT and mainframe. I literally have dealt with companies that use 1970s Unix mainframes, and that had vendors saying that the pension fund in Japan. I worked on a project I supported. I didn't work on it. I was the lawyer for it. But 8 years ago, the pension system in Japan did not believe that it was possible to use a modern computing system for its pension system, because its vendors had told it that Japan's massive pension system for 120 million people could only work on its 1970s mainframe. And we had to do a proof of concept demonstrating that if you ran it on a supercomputer with Windows and cloud storage, that it wouldn't break, which they didn't believe. So you were absolutely correct about that, KOTGC. But I don't know if we're talking about the same thing. Sadiq asked, am I working for a law firm? Not anymore. I worked for a law firm for about 6 years, and now I work as a lawyer for a company. IT company. But I worked for a law firm for many years, and I have friends who are still working at a law firm and people who work in other companies now as well. Life is much better in-house. Less money, but life is much better. Vincent Birch, wow. Okay, I'm not going to get through the topics, but I do like this. I do. So that's right. They carved the 4 presidents' faces on Mount Rushmore, which, by the way, is a huge problem. That it was done without the permission of the Lakota people. I don't know, but it was basically they took their most sacred mountain and carved a whole bunch of colonized. And specifically, some of the presidents on it are vociferously, genocidally anti-Indigenous American, and they carved these faces on it. I mean, it's just about the most offensive thing you could have done. But yes, if we did that, probably on some Ainu part of Japan, tried to be as culturally insensitive as possible, who would we put on? I don't know. We'd probably have the guys from the money. Same deal. I mean, geez, if they go by longest tenure of prime minister, one of them would have to be Shinzo Abe. And that just leftists would go and dynamite the mountain immediately. And then or cover it in mega solar. I just wouldn't fly. I think it would be too. Do you think you can? I mean, in New Zealand, if we were to carve the faces of 5 New Zealand prime ministers on Mount Ruapehu, you think we'd put Piggy Muldoon on there? And do you think everyone would accept that? I don't know that you could do that sort of. That's a very 19th century thing to do, to put all the faces on a mountain. Strong squirrel. Yes. 10 minutes left. What do I do? But exactly, I don't think you can do that anymore. I don't think you can. I think you could put Taylor Swift on there. I don't think you could I don't think we respect politicians enough to destroy mountains. Well, we would destroy mountains for them, but not by putting their faces on. Could you imagine if they, I'm not even going to say the T word, but yes, that there's an American who would love to put his face on Mount Rushmore. Anyway, onwards. Rugby. I said I was going to talk about rugby. The Japan professional rugby competition finished today. It was a great game. It was a really, really, normally grand finals and big. I don't know if it's like this for the Super Bowl or for American sports or for soccer, but in rugby there is a problem with finals, that teams become super defensive. They worry more about, they take less risks to score points. They're more worried about losing than taking risks to win. And in rugby, that can make for a really boring rugby game where they just smash into each other and don't try anything. Japanese rugby is not like that. They were throwing it around. It was a really, really entertaining game. Both teams, by the way, the Japan rugby competition has attracted literally the best rugby players from all over the world. It's an amazing competition. The New Zealand quarterback equivalent, the number 10, was playing on the team that won against the Japanese national representative on the other one. There was some extraordinary talent. Some of the best players in the world were playing in this final, and they were throwing the ball around, and it was entertaining, and there were some controversial calls. I had a bit of a drama with the end of the game, the broadcast, which I had to record. I was going out for a run during the second half. I came back to watch it, and I missed the end of the game. In the middle of a last-minute try or no try, video replay call. And it turned out they didn't grant the try, which is a shame because the Saitama Wild Knights were undefeated the entire season. And they only lost the final, which I feel bad for them because they also played really well. But Toshiba played better through the whole game. Michael Leach, the New Zealand-born Japanese national team captain, his final game, I believe, and he had a great game. So it was a really great advertisement for the game. And Japan does rugby really, really well. So I could talk a lot more about rugby, but it was a great game today. And if you get a chance to see highlights, you should go do that. Okay, I'm going to go rapid fire, 5 minutes, because I'm going to be DJing after this. I could normally extend, but triumphant starts with a T. Yes, indeed. Anyway, so let's go for only 57% of Japanese feel happy, third lowest among 30 surveyed countries. That's interesting. It makes me curious. What are the less happy countries? I mean, there could be a lot of things behind this, but the fact that overall it's low. It is interesting, and I think it says a lot about the way that the society works here. Like, happiness just doesn't really seem to be a goal of Japanese society. It's more like avoiding stepping on people's toes. Solid Shindo 3 earthquake last night. Was this last night? It was last night, 22 hours ago. About this time last night, actually. Actually, a bit later than this, but yeah, decent shake, actually. First one in a while, so there we go. Tokyo election, the governor's going to go for a third term. We've got, what did I promise in the bad, oh god, racist police we talked about, mega solar we talked about, the bad tourists. Oh, this is the bad tourists. Okay, perfect. There's I'm not showing the actual tweet, but there was an incident at a Kyoto shrine, at a Jinja, Shinto shrine, where apparently a tour guide, a British sounding tour guide who was taking some tourists around, or possibly his family, actually, I don't know, they were elderly British people by the sounds of it, were sort of apparently getting into some shenanigans, not filmed, ringing the bell dramatically at the Shinto shrine. And someone else who was visiting the shrine, I originally thought someone from like a shrine staff, it was not shrine staff, it was just someone who was like offended at these outrageous tourists acting outrageous at a religious, site at a Shinto shrine, sort of did the Japanese thing of following them around and scolding them and eyeballing them and sort of intimidating them. And so the guy decided to turn around and, basically confront the person that was kind of confronting them. I'm trying to say this as favorably as possible towards the foreigner in question. The person who was following them around filmed the encounter and filmed this guy kind of being a dick, honestly, just sort of, proving he could speak Japanese, but deliberately not, then only speaking English with her and threatening to call the police and demanding that she delete her video and all this sort of stuff. And sort of just doing it in a kind of a, overbearing sort of colonial way, when apparently it was all based on misbehavior off camera. Again, this could have just been, like an anti-tourist or an anti-foreign Japanese person just who literally sort of tried to provoke the video or whatever for attention. It's not really clear, but that said, the way he reacted was not a good look, which is why I'm not going to share it too much. But there's been so many examples. There's been a sort of viral video of a woman in Kyoto, like, how we can't go into the area where all the maiko and the geisha are in Kyoto anymore because there were too many cases of tourists, like, mobbing and blocking the way for tourists. And there was an example of this, of a woman tourist basically trying to stand in front and get a photo of a geisha blocking her way walking through. And stuff like this is why no foreigner is allowed to walk through there anymore. Those tourists have ruined it for everybody, including Japanese people. Like, nobody can go through there anymore just because a few people didn't know how to act like human beings. And that is sad. That is a consequence of cheap tourism coming here. Even expensive tourism. Well, it's always been more expensive until now. We haven't had this problem. So, yes, just don't be a dickhead. Please come to Japan, but don't be a dickhead. And same applies to everywhere else. If you want a chatbot where you can chat to Xi Jinping, apparently the Chinese government's making that. I don't see how they think that's a good idea. Many questions. The first of all being, can I call you Winnie the Pooh? We have interesting one here. For the yen, if you're coming from overseas and you're enjoying the cheap yen, just a heads up, the Japanese companies, which have to make a guess of what the yen is going to cost to the US dollar in future quarters for calculating how much they think they're going to have to spend on buying stuff from overseas and how much their earnings are going to be in US dollars. A lot of companies are assuming 144 yen to the dollar will be the exchange rate in the next 3 to 12 months. So they're thinking that the yen will get stronger. I don't see that happening. I see the yen getting weaker and weaker still. But maybe they know something that I don't. I've always worked in companies that worked with an assumption of 110 yen, just for an idea that right now we're nearly at 160, how out of whack it is. But they're predicting that it'll get like 15%, 20%. Is that right? 10 to 15%, the yen will get more expensive, which will mean I can finally go overseas and not feel impoverished anymore, which would be a good thing. But there you go. What else have we got here? We've got foreigners are not happy that they could lose their permanent residency over misunderstandings with tax, which is a fair complaint, and that's good. It's nice to see that the Mainichi is covering that. What else have we got? Oh, the governor of... So right now, of course, China currently doing exercises, practicing blockading and isolating Taiwan, worried about SpaceX being able to stop Taiwan from being cut off, which is a good thing. The Starlink service, of course. I mean, the fact that they're worried that it's going to mess up their plans to turn Taiwan into a concentration camp. There's also a thing this week that the Okinawan governor, who's just so against the Japanese national government and the U.S. military bases and so on, he said that, you know, he was sort of saying, hey, these Chinese exercises around Taiwan aren't a big deal. This is just China wanting to practice defending itself, so we shouldn't make such a big fuss about it. He's literally like so anti-American, and his name is Denny. His father is American. Obviously doesn't have a good relationship with his dad. He's willing to throw Taiwan into a concentration camp, basically, you know, just to screw America in his domestic debates over the location of US bases in Okinawa, which I thought was a bit terrible, actually. Oh yeah, here's the lady I was talking about, standing in the way. Oh, this will not let me escape. There's a lady. You can see this sort of thing is why foreigners are not allowed to walk in this part of Kyoto anymore, why tourists are not allowed in this area anymore. You see the lady trying to walk, you know, to work. Just don't do it, and too many things like that happening. Fourth flight of Starship possibly happening on the 5th or 6th, possibly during this week, which again is... I'm not a big fan of Elon, but these rockets are awesome. I'm looking forward to that. More people smoke weed every day than drink every day in America, or at least admit to it, which, given that it still is federally criminalized in America, is a remarkable stat. I think I've already shared with you my opinions that I became more anti-weed being in a place where weed was everywhere than I was by being in a place without it. I accept that logically. It's weird that it's illegal compared to other things. It is kind of obnoxious. Yeah, the Okinawan governor, for one, welcomes Taiwan's new CCP overlords. All of that stuff. Did some runs. Oh yeah, ran around the palace pretty fast the other day, so that was pretty cool. Didn't even get to talk about Scarlett Johansson, but I don't think she has a case. I think I've talked about this before. They've actually sorted out now that they actually had hired the voice actress that they used, and they never mentioned her or Scarlett Johansson to her before that. So, you know, it'll be interesting. Again, I would be one of the legion of lawyers willing to work for her for free, even if she's going to lose, but I think she's going to lose. All of that. Apparently Bing had an outage, but did anybody notice? I'm not sure. Tree falling in the forest situation. All of that sort of stuff. And I'll say that's the week. We're definitely up on time. Quick look at the comments, and then I'm going to go into the after party. But thank you for keeping me company as usual. Here for the DJing, says KOTG2. I'm glad that you did. I hope you can find the link. Aaron, if you don't mind, Sasuga, yes. Aaron already got the link in the chat there, so pop over there. I'm going to pop over there myself. I've got to set up the table a little bit. But, and social media, actually, yeah, more to do with social media rather than cheap tourism. I think that you're right. Euro, Japanese yen, 170. That's, amen. That's what it could be. I mean, for someone earning yen, I definitely want that currency to adapt a little bit. Is China promising Taiwan one country? No, I think they're promising Taiwan one country, one system. I don't think they've given up on trying to... I mean, they were offering Taiwan the same deal as Hong Kong, which is exactly what Taiwan is now terrified of, so I don't think that they're promising anything anymore. Squirrels were strong today. They were fighting. They were muscular. They were on steroids. What could I do? Good show. You wish me plenty of joy and butter. Thank you, Slake Manson. I will definitely enjoy it. Softy Papa, glad that you could make it. And very much enjoying... I don't have advice on banks. Other than don't use Mizuho because they always have IT problems. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good week. Hang around. I'm going to be on the DJay after party in just a moment. And see you next week. 2.5 Voyages on this channel with Victor and somebody else. See you soon. Boom. Peace. Any stream.